I paint freely, as notably native as possible. I'm a free man. I used to sign my paintings 287 as my treaty number. I no longer have a quarrel with my oppressors. I still don't like them, but they don't like me either, you know.
Just looking back at me, look right here, there you go, perfect, excellent. Fabulous. Thank you very much.
In the world of art, Mr. Alex Janvier stands out for many reasons. He paints in the genre of abstract, his style characterized by a distinctive use of the curvilinear, smooth but complex lines, inducing bold statements about politics, religion, and Canadian history. Alex has always used his art to arouse the passions of a restless nation, as he is doing today at the National Gallery of Canada. With the help of Indigenous curators, we take you inside the art of this remarkable man.
Walking exercise.
You can't look at Alex's, one of his abstract works, and the color and the design, without just being taken by that, to being like drawn into that space. It's layered, and it, I don't want to say contradicts, but it covers both ends of the spectrum. So there's a lot of flat space in his work, but at the same time you can go very, very, very deep into it. And sometimes he works on the surface, but then he'll create a landscape or a perspective that you can go right into. Other times the designs float on the surface, you know, because the background is linen and they're just hovering there. You can get that at a very superficial level, or you can start to look into it and begin to understand it on a very deep level, how the narratives that he's building, and covering everything from time immemorial to, you know, at some point in the future.
His work, to me, was being abstract, was so unique and individual and different from the Indigenous art that was being practiced at that time in the, you know, the late 80s, early 90s. And I felt rather intimidated by it because I didn't know a lot about abstract art. And, but after spending several years working with Alex, listening to Alex, and really looking and pondering his paintings, it really only began to make sense to me and to see how important he really was and is. He was then and he still is, you know, almost 30 years later.
What he broke open for everybody is that, you know, we can be painters, you know, and we can work in these contemporary materials, and we can paint our own stories, and we can also be abstract. And not that everyone wants to be an abstract expressionist, you know, but his form of abstraction is, you know, I don't even know if we can call it that. You know, there's certain Western art terms that sometimes I think, I don't know if we can call it that at all, because there's something deeply, for me, deeply spiritual about his symbolism and his images, and, you know, and how where he goes abstract, it's more, I would say it goes more into spirit.
Alex Janvier has fashioned himself a lifestyle to match his values of place and belonging. Here on the shores of Cold Lake, Alberta, he built his fortress of creativity, where on most days you might find him working here, surrounded by quiet memories, inspiration, and love. Many in the art world marvel at his prolific output. However, Few know of what Alex had to endure to come this far in life. He never questioned his identity. Instead, his place in the world was defined by it.
When I finished high school, I was looking for a place to train as an artist. And the first application was to London County Council in England. And I got an okay, and a man called Janvier wrote, and I was to be accepted. And I couldn't get a passport or a written permit from Indian agent, you know. And then I applied to Art College of Ontario. And the Indian agent, he went there at one time. He's a failed artist. I had to go to St. Paul, I had to hitchhike. But you had to hitchhike those days, you know. The outcome of that visit was that he showed me my travel, you know, to Calgary. I says, from Calgary, how do I get to Ontario, Toronto? He says, you're not going to Toronto. He says, those people are too smart for you.
I would imagine that there were enormous challenges such as that, and I think Alex is a good example of just, you know, the impact of those challenges. There are a number of paradoxes also with Alex, and one of them is when he went to residential school, which was just, you know, a horrific experience for him. But that was where his artistic creativity was recognized and supported to a certain extent, and that's a paradox. And also the principal sent him to work with Carlo Altenberg, who Alex has credited with being the major influence in his life on very many sort of formal and philosophical aspects of his art.
Like I said, I was well instructed earlier by this Carlo Altenberg. I got his picture up on the wall here. I love that man because he gave me the power and the strength to go beyond the pretentious art schools, you know, what they think they know, you know.
It was the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology that he entered in 1956, graduated in 1960. He was the only Indigenous student there. Indian Affairs, of course, covered his tuition to a certain degree, and after his second year, they wanted him to switch to commercial art, and he said, you know, there's no way I'm doing, you know, designing packages and billboards or, you know, whatever. He says, I want to be a fine artist.
Sort of in the day, that's where you'd go to these vocational colleges. And then he started painting, but painting, again, indigenizing painting. He wanted to see us in those paintings. And so, you know, his mother, his Marian child, you know, was so beautiful of, you know, brown Mary and brown baby and brown Jesus. And it just, you know, I think he was one of the first artists to look at biblical narratives and paint culturally into that. But the idea of indigenizing an art practice is what he has done.
I heard you're doing good.
Well, I did the best I could.
That's beautiful.
Anyway, my world of art is pretty well stationed up. I don't need to go to ACAD or OCAD or even to the London County Council. I've did and accomplished a career that no other person has been able to do.
He never let anything prevent him from making the kind of art that he wanted to make, right? And even though the world wasn't ready for it, and still partially the world's not ready for contemporary Indigenous art. Like it is and it isn't at the same time. It's like this crazy situation. But he never surrendered.
On view are many works that have become icons of the artist's abstract calligraphic style, as well as works that have never been exhibited before. This retrospective allows the viewer to experience the development of Alex's work over the more than 6 decades he has devoted to his painting, from his earliest works, painted when he was only 15 years old and a student at the Blue Quills Indian Residential School, to some of his most recent works, painted now after 81 years of life, learning, and creative experimentation. Combining his cultural teachings, formal education, work, political experiences, life's lessons, and his close observations of the natural world around him, Alex Janvier has produced an art that is unique in Canada and the world.
Only an artist can take you deep inside their work, to understand what inspires and informs their impressions on life. This is where Alex takes over the discussion, to give meaning to his slogan, "We are the land, and the land is us."
This part of painting is really about the area I come from, Cold Lake, Alberta. We're on the edge of the Great Plains, and this was the way our people used to live in teepees and so on. These are little animal ducks and so on. There's also insects and things that go in the ground, and there's little birds with their little eggs, you know. This is a painting about one of the problems of a tribe that didn't sign any treaty. Things in Alberta was complicated politically. The oil companies would get leases from the government of Alberta. Once they get those leases, they control the effect on the land. And so this particular painting was painted red background. I was angry when I did that. But you can see that when I'm angry, I can do beautiful things too at the same time. Painting is just painting, yeah? But if you need to say something, like writers, they write and they defend positions, or, you know, they make their statements to agree or disagree. In my painting, I had the fortune to be able to paint and at the same time still make statements.
I think Alex is always talking about that in some ways, right? Because it's landlordship is about sovereignty, is about knowing oneself and knowing the land. But it's something that you have to assert, and I think that that Alex does that as well. He's asserting that idea of landlordship, of being in control of the land, in control of oneself, and the interrelatedness of that, how those are mutually reinforcing. The importance of when he says, we are the land and the land is us. If you're in control of yourself and you're in control of the land, then that's a very powerful place to be.
I truly believe, Alex, that without your hard work, your perseverance, your indestructible belief in yourself and your art, we would not be here tonight. Thank you for your leadership and your inspiration. And as you say, it's time the Indians become the landlords again. Masi Cho, Alex. Masi Cho.
I am truly honored tonight to be able to be showing to you artwork that came from these sources, from the beadwork and also from the porcupine quill work, from old ladies who had kept our culture alive. And then everything was going pretty good. All of a sudden, those big trucks arrived. They threw us back in the back of those trucks and took us to this residential school. I'd like to tell you that it was no picnic. First of all, I couldn't speak my language. Then I was told that the God that I believed in was evil, and that these elders were no good. And then there was two languages, French and English, and I was forced to try and communicate in a language, two languages I couldn't even speak in. That's where the beginning of the discommunication, and I found a way to express what's inside of Alec, the little boy who was lost in the ranks. I've learned to paint, to draw. Thank you very, very much. Merci, Chuck.
As the Janvier exhibit traveled across Canada, we caught up with Alex in the land of the Wolastoqiyik. A demonstration of respect greets him wherever Alex goes, and every experience reinforces a conviction for his station in life. Janvier is a messenger for justice. Long before the word reconciliation entered the Canadian lexicon, Alex waged a campaign to enlighten us about right and wrong. It was wrong to deny Indigenous people their rightful claim to lands and resources. Taking back the land was his idea of what is right. And it is characteristic of Mr. Janvier not to mince words using phrases that most reconciliation advocates avoid.
And I've been talking about landlordship, and I will repeat it again. We do need the natives to recover this landlordship. They are the landlords. This land was handed to us by a creator to look after it. But we got interfered for, since 1492, I think it was.
This is in the boat.
Yeah.
And that was in the boat. So are you going to stay home in the spring?
There are many experiences that drive our creativity in art. We can touch people in so many ways, while art can also become a bridge for cultures deeply divided by race, politics, and history. Alex Janvier has spent the last 7 decades painting history and leaving messages for future generations. His message is one of hope and guided by truth. Alex is a man who overcame many hardships, an artist who defiantly used his Indian treaty number as his art signature. The artist once known as 287 is now a landmark of his own, a beacon in the world of Indigenous art, steadying his paintbrush on concepts that come to him from a higher calling.
I don't really know how I can best describe what I did. It's just an act of the landlord, silently. But the silence is broken. It's out in the open now. I'm glad that I lived through each painting.